In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create your HTML form for your Project 3 assignment. So this is what the actual finished form will look like. It's going to be a request to quote form. So it's going to have a field set with a legend of contact information. It's going to ask the person to fill in their company, first name, last name, email address, website URL, and phone number. You can see here with the asterisk that those first four fields are required. There's another field set here with the legend services needed, and there's a question for budget, which is required, and the person needs to select one of these. They can also select which services they need, and we use checkboxes here so they can select more than one, however many they need. Has a question, do you currently have a website? The default answer is yes. They can change that to no. And then there's a question, how did you hear about us? It's required. They can select one of those, and then they can enter in any additional comments and submit the request. Now, because this is only HTML, you don't have access to a server to be able to process this form using a programming language like PHP or Cold Fusion or ASP.NET. This form will actually not go anywhere, but what we're learning here is how to actually create the HTML form elements and how to use JavaScript for the form validation. So in the activity on FSO, make sure to review Chapter 19 in the book Interact with Web Standards and the assigned articles from the Creating Effective Forms lesson. We're going to be using this online article, JavaScript Validation Snippets, when we get to actually putting in the JavaScript validation. And so then here it will also show you what exactly it is that you need to include on your page. So now I'm going to walk you through that. So I'm going to use Aptana Studio. You can use Dreamweaver CS5 or any editor that you like. So going into Aptana Studio, just take a moment for that to load up. Click on Create New File. Choose Untitled HTML File. Click Finish. And now remember that it puts in this default HTML document, but we're going to clear all of that out. We're going to start from scratch because we're going to use an HTML5 document. So go ahead and write your doc type here for HTML5. Remember, it's just HTML. Make sure to close that. Write your opening HTML tag. And remember, in Aptana Studio, it automatically closes the HTML tag for you. If you're using Dreamweaver or another editor, make sure that you also immediately close your HTML tag. We're going to go ahead and put in our head tag. Make sure that closes. And let's go ahead and put in our body tag. And again, make sure that closes. Back in our head tag, we're going to add our meta tag for our character set, which is UTF-8. And then underneath that, we'll put our title tag, and we're going to call this a request, a quote form, since that's what we're building here. Okay, so that's all we're going to do in the head tag for right now. Now in the body tag, we're going to go ahead and write a header element, which remember is new to HTML5. So within that, we're going to do an H1, which is the topmost heading level in HTML, and we're going to call this request a quote. Underneath the header section, we're going to create a div with an ID, and we're just going to call this wrapper. This is what's going to wrap around the form that we're building. So make sure to put your closing div tag, and we have that there. And now we're going to put our form element. So you start with the word form, and then you put action. We're going to come back and fill these in. Method and name. And then immediately close your form tag and kind of push it down there towards the end of the page. So the action is the actual page that this form will be sent to with its values when the user submits it. Again, because we don't have a server to process this on, we're not actually going to put an action, but typically it would be something like form process.php, form process.cgi, something like that. So in this case, we're just going to put a hashtag, a pound sign like that, which means that basically it will just post back to itself. Now I said the word post, and that's the method we're going to use because we're actually going to be posting the form to the server if we had one. And then the name, so for this we're going to call it my form, and make sure to do it like this, lowercase my, capital F for form, then the rest of the word form lowercase. And you'll see when we do the JavaScript why it's important to make sure that you have the right casing. You just have to be consistent with your casing with JavaScript. So now within our form, we're going to go ahead and put our first field set. Again, make sure you have your closing field set tag, and then we're going to put a legend. and we're going to call this company information, close our legend, and then underneath that, let's go ahead and put our first label. This is going to be for company, and then we're going to end the label tag, just put a space, and now we're going to put our input type of text. This will be a text box that the person will fill in for their company name. So the name of this field will be called company. We're going to make this lowercase. The value is going to be empty because we want the person to fill it in. And then we're going to set a max length equal to 255 characters. Most company names aren't going to go over that, and it's a good idea to set max lengths on your input elements. So just make sure that you have opening and closing quotation marks around each thing, because that will throw things off. So let's go ahead now and save your file. So go up to File, Save, and go ahead and create a folder on your desktop. We call it FWD, and we're going to name this page form.html. So let's go ahead now and see what this looks like at this point. So go into your Finder, go into your FWD folder, and find your form.html file that you just saved. Let's go ahead and open with Firefox. Okay, so you see here, so I have my H1 heading, request a quote. If I look at the top of the browser bar, I have my title, request a quote form, and then I have my legend, company information, and my first text box for company. So let's go ahead and continue on. So go back to Aptana Studio. Now I'm going to put a break tag. So what that's going to do is that's going to break to the next line, because the next thing we want to put is first name. And now to kind of ease the typing, if you just copy the company one, paste it in, change this to first name, and we're going to change the name of the input to first name, all lowercase. We'll go ahead and keep max length 255. Most people probably won't have that many characters, but it's fine. Now let's go ahead, we're going to copy everything, the label, the input type, and the break tag. Copy that, and we're going to go ahead and paste that underneath, and we're going to change this to last name. All right, and the next one we'll go ahead and copy and paste again, and this is going to be email address. So we're going to call this one email, and we're going to copy, paste again. This will be website URL. So we're just going to call this one website. And then finally, copy and paste one last time. And this is going to be phone. And we're going to call this phone. And for the max length for this one, let's just put 25 characters. That should give people enough room to put their phone number and any extensions they may have. So let's go ahead and save this. And let's go back and look at it in Firefox. So if you click the reload button, or you can also right-click and choose reload, you'll see now I have all my fields on here, but they don't look very good. They're not lined up, and in order to make it easier for the user to fill it in, you want to keep everything lined up against each other. So let's go back into Aptana Studio, and we're going to set some CSS styles here. We're not going to use an external style sheet like you learned in Fundamentals of Web Design. We're just going to use an internal style sheet, which you also learned about, just to make this so that everything's on one page for simplicity. So go ahead and put your opening style tag. Make sure your closing style tag is there. And now we're going to set the style for the body. Make sure to put your opening curly braces, your closing curly braces. And we're going to set the default font to be Helvetica, Arial, Sans Serif, and you can choose whatever font family you would like. Make sure to have your ending semicolon. And then we're going to say the line height, this is just to give it a little bit of padding, will be 1.7 EM. And remember, EM, the default is 1 EM for the browser page, and so anything above 1 will increase it by that percentage, and anything less than 1 will decrease it by that percentage. So for line height, we're just making the line height a little bit taller to give things a little bit more cushioning. Now let's go ahead and put a style for our label. Again, opening and closing curly braces. We're going to float that to the left, ending semicolon. We're going to clear to the left, and we're going to make the width of each one about 100 pixels. That should give them enough room. And you notice I clear out the white space when I'm done, just to make things a little bit tidier. For our input elements, we're going to go ahead and give them a margin left of 1 EM. sure to have your ending semicolon on each of these lines. For our wrapper ID, do # wrapper, and remember that was our div that wraps around this. So right now it stretches out and across the entire browser. So if I go back to Firefox and I look, you see how the field set goes all the way to the end, but there's really not that much information in here, so we're just going to condense that a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the width 480 pixels. And then finally, for our legend, we're going to make that bold so that it stands out a little bit more. So we'll do font weight is bold. And then we're going to make the color of the text green. You can choose whatever color you like. The green looks nice. Let's go ahead and save this. Go back to Firefox. And if we reload the page, now you'll see my legend is bold and green. My width has been shortened to 480 pixels, so it fits nicely on the page. And you can see now everything is lined up. Again, makes it much easier to go through and fill out this form. So let's go back to Aptana Studio. And so we have now the next set of questions we're going to ask, like what is your budget, what services do you need, and so on. So we're going to go ahead and create another field set. So after your closing field set, go ahead and put another opening field set. Make sure you have your closing one there. We're going to put our legend, and this one's going to be called services needed. Then after our ending legend, we're going to ask them what their budget is. We're going to put a break tag just to give so that the line breaks to the next line. Now we're going to put our drop-down list. Remember, if we look at our original form, which is what we're creating, for budget, we're creating a drop-down list here to give them an option to choose from. So drop-down lists are used with the select elements. We're going to do select. We're going to give it a name of budget, remember lowercase, a size of 1. That means that the person can only select one item in the list. We're not allowing them to choose multiple items in the drop-down list, which is an option you could do depending on the type of question you're asking. Since you're asking about budget, you want them just to select one of them. Make sure to put your closing select tag there. And then within the select tags, we're going to give them the options. So option, and make sure again to have your closing option tag, and we're going to say less than $5,000. The next option, we're going to say $5,000 to $10,000. And then third option, we're going to say greater, and you can use whatever values you want, greater than $10,000. Now I could also, within the first option tag, I can also put a value in here. So I can say, maybe just do a shorthand like this, LT 5000. So that's the data that's actually going to be posted from the form to the server would be this value, LT 5000. So maybe, if I didn't want the spaces and when the value got passed, I could change that. If I just want exactly what's here, then I can just not include anything in the value at all and just leave that completely blank. Now you don't want to do this. You don't want to have it empty like that. What you want to do instead is just leave that entire word out. Now one thing we do want to add here on the top of option is we want to make sure that they select one. So we're going to say select one. And again, make sure you have your closing option tag. And this will be important because when we do our JavaScript validation, we're going to make sure that they selected at least one of these 3 and didn't just leave it on select one. Okay, so let's go ahead and save, and let's go see what this looks like. Let's go back to Firefox, and I'm going to reload. Okay, so I have my services needed. Here's my new field set, and there's my budget options there. So everything's looking good. Let's go back to Aptana Studio.